Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Copy that. CBS News, this is Mission Control in Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is Bill Harwood, CBS News. How do you hear me?
Bill, greetings. I hear you loud and clear. How about me?
Loud and clear. And, hey, Mark, it's great to chat with you today. I wasn't sure we'd get a chance to talk before you came home, so I wanted to get a bit of perspective on your flight. Assuming you're coming down on March 30 as planned, you'll have logged 355 days in space, and, you know, that's a long time even by military deployment standards. So first question is, how's that been going for you? How are you keeping in shape, both psychologically and physically?
Well, that's a great question. I think psychologically, I really try to pay attention to just the day that I'm on and not think about how many days are left. And I certainly am not counting down the days. I think that would just be make it more challenging for me. And I've been very, very fortunate to have wonderful crewmates. Of course, NASA does a fantastic job of picking astronauts that are highly qualified, but everybody's just getting along fantastically, and it's been a pleasure. I also make a point of meditating for 20 minutes every morning, and recently I decided to start doing it in front of our biggest window, the cupola. And so I just, every morning before everybody else is awake, with all the lights off, I can sit and look for 20 minutes at the stars, and I feel very, very fortunate to have those experiences. And then to wrap this answer up with about the physical health, we have a exercise bike simulator, a treadmill with bungee cords to hold us down onto the treadmill so we can run, and also a really good resistive exercise device. Instead of lifting weights, we basically push against vacuum cylinders to simulate that resistive force. And we exercise quite a bit, so we're well taken care of.
Well, I think the meditation in the cupola is a totally cool thing. I hadn't thought about that before, but that would be I don't even know what that would be, but I'm envious that you get the chance to do that.
Yeah, I wish I could find a good way to describe it to people. It's awe-inspiring every time and very different every time, too.
Hey, what's the most challenging part of a flight of this duration? I mean, is it just the number of days going by? Is it the isolation? I mean, I'm trying to picture myself in that situation, and I'm not sure what I would think the most challenging thing is.
I'd say two things. It's very much an indoor job. We can't go outside without lots of prep time, and even then you're inside of a spacesuit, so you don't get to feel weather, breezes, rain. And then the other thing, certainly, definitely the biggest thing is being separated from my family for so long. But I can keep that in perspective because we've got so many military folks that have to do this routinely as well, so I really can't feel sorry for myself.
Have you ever had any second thoughts about signing up for this long a time in space?
Well, I made sure I talked to my family. I didn't know with certainty that the flight would be this long when I launched, but I certainly knew that it was a possibility, and I made sure my family was aware of that, and they all agreed that I should still say yes. So I didn't have any second thoughts. I felt like it was an opportunity to fill a need that we had, and I was very happy to be able to fill it.
Well, have you had any regrets since you've been up there, given the reality of the flight?
No, I really haven't. I came back from my last flight feeling like spaceflight is a really big sacrifice. It was hard. I think psychologically I was just kind of beating myself up every time I made mistakes. And this time around, I'm in a better spot. I think I'm really paying attention to the inner voice, trying to tell myself, you know what, you got this. And not, when you make little mistakes, just kind of laugh it off. So I think that was the hardest part before, and so this time that's not happened. I'm able to talk myself down from those places, and it's been really pleasant. It's been really a lot of amazing experiences.
Would you stay longer if you could? I know the Soyuz has a bingo, and obviously it can't stay up indefinitely, but if you could stay up longer, would you?
I'm going to change the question to say if they said I needed to stay up longer, I would happily stay up longer, but I would not volunteer to stay up longer.
Understood. Hey, you know, you'll pass Mark Kelly's record for the longest single flight by a U.S. astronaut on March 15th. Have you talked to him since you've been up there as to what to expect when you come back, or has he given you any advice maybe before launch on, you know, the readaptation aspect of it?
That I actually probably should. I have not done that. I've last seen him when he left NASA. Oh, no, I actually ran into him in an airport recently, before the flight, of course. No, that's a good idea. I probably should send him a note and ask him for any advice he's got.
What are you going to miss the most? If it's not the meditation in the cupola windows, what are you going to miss the most when you come down?
I will miss the certainty that every day I'm spending contributing with innovations in science, technological demonstrations that are helping out all of humanity and pushing the boundaries of human existence. There is a very good, strong sense of purpose for all of us up here as we do this work.
I got to ask you the standard reporter question for somebody on a long-duration flight. What are you looking forward to the most when you get back home, other than being with your family, of course? I know that's number one, but is there any activity or anything you're really looking forward to?
I am looking forward. I've got a catamaran. I'm really looking forward to getting back on the water with that catamaran, little catamaran, and just getting anything associated with the water locally where we live and spending time outside with my family.
Looking ahead, the U.S. Has recently approved operating ISS through 2030. I mean, not everybody signed on yet, but what's your sense of the station's overall health? I know you're not part of the structural engineering that goes on here, but what's your sense of it as an operator, its ability to go through 2030?
I'm very confident that it's going to continue with the successes it's had for another decade. The space station, certainly, it's been around more than 20 years now, and we've had people in orbit because of that for more than 20 years. But we've been constantly improving it. We've recently upgraded the batteries that help store electrical power, and we're in the process of continuing to upgrade the solar arrays that provide that electrical power.
We hadn't heard from the Russians yet on the long-range plans for ISS, and as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of tension on the ground right now between the two nations. Do you guys talk about that up there? I mean, I know you get along well with your Russian crewmates, obviously, but how do you guys talk about it?
I think the conversation I had with Anton, the space station commander right now is a Russian cosmonaut, was just he told us about some of the things that were going on, and we didn't really get into any feelings about how we felt about it. I will cherish the friendships I have with Anton, Pyotr, and my previous crewmate on this flight and other flights, Sasha Mazurkin and Oleg Novitsky. They are wonderful human beings, and so I really hope things do go well. I definitely think that the space station and our cooperation with the Russians on the space station in particular are a great sign of how successful we can be when we get to know each other and do things that are cooperative rather than find points of conflict.
Well, one last question from me. I was going to ask you about spacewalks. There's a couple coming up. I hope you get to go out the hatch. But I'll make my last question this. The commercial crew business is really heating up, and you were there when the actress and her producer got there. And, of course, the Axiom 1 mission is coming up. I guess now it's at the end of March, but it would have come up before you left. What's your sense of the commercial astronauts on board the space station? Are you good with that, non-professionals, in the context of ISS ops?
I am better with that now that I've actually experienced having these private folks come up to be on the space station. It was wonderful seeing the sense of joy they had. Especially Clinton and Yulia, the Russian film producer and actress, being able to share those cupola views with them, hearing them get really quiet as they stared into the night sky through the cupola. I'm really looking forward to how a professional videographer shares that scenery with the public. So I look forward to seeing what they make up.
Hey, well, that sounds great, Mark. I'm out of time, got to go, but best of luck on the rest of your mission, and look forward to seeing you back on terra firma.
Thanks, Bill. It was great talking to you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the CBS News portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from ABC News.
Station, this is Brad Milkey with ABC News. How do you hear me?
Brad, I hear you loud and clear. How about me?
You sound great. Mark Vande Hei, thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing so far? I just saw you do was that like a backflip for fun?
Yeah, we do have a lot of fun. It's hard to bump your head onto. Well, actually, it would be easy to bump my head, but it'd be easy to bump my head on the ceiling doing a backflip. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've recently worked a backflip with a twist or a forward flip with a twist into our repertoire.
Hey, so be honest. Do you have a countdown for when you come back to Earth? Like, do you have scratch marks on your walls counting down the days?
I absolutely refuse to do that because I think it's really important to me to focus on, and psychologically for me, this is really healthy, to focus on the path that I've been to get me here and not focus on how many days I have left. The only time I really am tempted to do that is when I'm working out really hard on a resistive exercise device early in the morning. I just feel very fatigued. Those are the times I think, how am I possibly going to keep doing this for this many more days? And if I just think, wait a minute, you've done it for a lot more days, so don't worry about it. You got this.
Well, and going back to your mission, like, can you just explain to our audience, true or false, you are stuck in space because of a Russian movie?
False. I'm going to go ahead and clarify that I'm in space to make sure that we had continuous U.S. presence on the space station, and because of that, when we made sure that I was on a spacecraft when there was a risk of not having a U.S. presence on the space station if that spacecraft wasn't here. And it turned out that that was the case because the Dragon vehicles didn't overlap. We had Crew 2 leave before Crew 3 came up. I'm sorry, Crew 1 left before Crew 2. Am I getting my crews messed up? Dragon crews didn't overlap most recently, and I was the only person on the space station for about a week because of that.
And then what was it like, by the way, having civilians, having non-astronauts floating around there with you? Because you were actually kind of involved in the filmmaking process just by the fact that, you know, you're the guy who knows his way around.
I was a little concerned. I thought there might be a lot of our folks would be trying to take care of them. Honestly, Klim and Yulia, the movie producer and the Russian actress, they spent so much time on the Russian segment working very, very hard to take advantage of their time on the space station to get the scenes they wanted for that movie. It had no impact to us at all. In fact, it was really good for our morale when I spent time with them making sure they were okay in the cupola, looking out the window and trying to get some good views out there. When I realized they were going to lose the sunlight, I turned off all of the lights, shut down the computer lids, turned off the lights in adjacent modules, so it was very, very dark in there, and they got quiet like they were in a medieval chapel or something in Europe. It was really nice to share those awe-inspiring views with them.
Hey, as far as being up, you know, you're going to come back to Earth as the guy who has spent more time in space than any other person, right? Has this timeline informed you about what we're going to have to consider as we work towards longer missions, like whether it's a return to the moon or mission to Mars? What is your perspective on the difference for an astronaut between a month in space and a year in space?
I think a 6-month mission, which is typical for us, is still a very long duration mission. So I think everybody that comes up here definitely contributes to the steps we're making forward towards those longer and longer trips. I do think that being up here for that long, you've really got to pay a lot of attention to your mental health. And I think NASA's doing a better and better job of that all the time. Even with the way we select astronauts, I think one of the joys of being up here for this extended period of time is all of the wonderful people that I've got to live here and work here with. So that's been a joy. And I got to correct one thing. I will not return to Earth as the person who spent the most time in space by a long shot. I will have the longest single space flight for an American astronaut should I return on the 30th of March. But there's other people that have spent, many people that have spent more time in space overall than I have.
Right, as far as overall. And then you mentioned the mental health thing. Physically, are there physical things that we're going to have to take into account as we work towards these longer missions?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we're doing a really good job of that. Our bone density is a concern, our cardiovascular health, our musculoskeletal system. When we go to Mars, we're going to go there. The first person to go to Mars is going to go there and have no one there to meet them. So we've got to understand really well what we can expect them to do to take care of themselves to accomplish their mission on another planetary surface. That's going to be new to us. I think the moon, going back to the moon, is a wonderful test bed for that, as we fly people there and keep them on another planetary surface for extended periods of time, like we're going to have to do for Mars someday.
Is there, and speaking of, because you've been there so long, is there stuff you're better at now than when you started the mission? Because I'm thinking, like, when Americans began the pandemic, we were all thinking, I'm going to be stuck at home, so I'm going to brush up on my Spanish, I'm going to learn the guitar. You've been, not by yourself, but you've been in an isolated environment. Any skills you've acquired?
Well, I already mentioned the forward flip with a half twist, but that's probably not as significant as what you're looking for. I would say, really, I'm just much better at my job. When we get to the space station, it's a very foreign environment, getting used to floating around. I literally, for example, without paying much attention, I can flip upside down and just kind of stick my feet on the ceiling without using my hands. I find that I use my feet and I can kind of twist my feet to hold myself in a position. It's very easy for me, without much thought, to go ahead and stand on different walls, and I'm very comfortable with all the places to stick my feet are. So that's become something that I can do really, really well, and it's made my life a lot easier than the first week I spent in space.
And then lastly, you've now seen astronauts coming on board the ISS via private flights. SpaceX has made its appearance. There are private companies talking about building their own space stations like the ISS, but, private space stations. When you talk to your fellow astronauts, either, the public sector or the private sector, what are you guys hoping to see from those companies? Like, what improvements and innovations do you think are attainable that we should be working towards?
Oh, I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, and that NASA really needs to happen, is that we've got successful business models that work in low Earth orbit, so that NASA is not the only customer for private companies who have the ability to do research in low Earth orbit and even provide training for astronauts, training space for astronauts, where that will allow us to then take taxpayer dollars and put them into pushing the boundaries further away, as opposed to continuing to have to invest so much into low Earth orbit. So hopefully this capability that we've developed so far and put so much effort into will become something that's profitable for companies and will persist because of that.
All right. Well, Mark Vande Hei, fascinating stuff and incredible record-setting gig there in space. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Brad. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you to all participants from CBS News and ABC News. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.